Jamal. I'm the CEO of GET, GET Group. And we have our presentation today will be two parts. The first part, I'm going to introduce GET in a few slides, talk about ourselves, who we are. And the second part of the presentation will be present by our legal counsel in GET Group, Ms. Caitlyn. Yes. And then let's move. Okay. As is mentioned here, GET has been founded 30 years ago by late Maysoon Jamal. I took the responsibility in 2005 after his, death. And we are specialized in security printing of government, issuing documents, and smart solution, and commercial card printers. In another way, we supply the government the hardware and the software for the security printing documents like passport and ID. And as well, we do some software smart solutions to the government, and we do it as well to the commercial side. And this is why we have another line from the hardware, which is the printers for commercial as well. GET at now we are almost 1,000 employees around the world. As I said, we are in we have 9 offices. We have USA, Canada, GCC, and Middle East, Colombia, and China. GET has been trusted by more than 25 partners from around the world, and we are also trusted with lots of government, almost the same numbers. Okay. When I took over the GET, which was a long journey for me, it was a challenge. I have found a challenge for taking this type of responsibility when you work with high customers like government, and the market, it's a different market from from where I came. So for me, it was a lot of challenges, and I'm saying this to say how we are linked to PCB, and how we were certified in ISO, and from where it came the needs to be here. So the challenges was for me the international threat, and everyone knows about it, global corruptions, fast growth of the technology, because I work with technology, and the time I joined in 2005, it was really the booming time. And technology is everywhere. We moved to the smartphones, everyone has his own iPad, computers, and this and that. And definitely I have many offices, so I have a different laws, and I have different regulations. And, when you talk about technology in that time, in the growing time, so the market was a big competition, everywhere. So you need to be organized in a good way, and you need to know your market, and you need to have, the standards, the international standards, to make you feel secure and happy that you are working in the right, path, and you're doing whatever is needed for your company. And especially the subject we are going to talk about today, the anti-bribery, it concerns us a lot because we work with government and we work with high, commercial companies. So it's need to be secure that we are being, covered. So we did a lots of, until it took me a long map until we are here. And we worked with too many, different consultants until we reached this level. Definitely, first of all, I was needing and looking to see who I am. I took a responsibility of company. I want to know the organization. So we started with a local consultant who helped us to restructure ourselves. Then we moved from there to go for, because we work with softwares, we were targeting to be secure that the software we are delivering to the customer is clean, is right in the right way, using the good technology. So we moved to, we were licensed by CMMI, we get the level 3, then the level 5. Then we appointed with Oliver Wyman's, who helped me to restructure myself in a right way, and gave me the directions that I need to work for ISO, because it's very important for me. And there's 2 types of ISO I need to look for, the 9001 and 27001. And definitely, we met with PECB, and we've been certified for this two type of ISO certification. Okay, let me talk about GET in numbers. We are 25 years leader in security printing industry. We have more than 20, as I said, 20 governments using GET technology. We are, printing the USA passport for more than 18 years, and this is a proud for us. And when I say printing, I say I supply the materials only. I don't do more than this. And then we do more than 25 million passport issuing by our system. We have more than 4 millions and more than 4 millions from the government IDs, and using also GET printers, and this is only the government, and we have also the commercial. We are doing a big numbers. And the type of our solution, it's very high resolution, so we use the 600 DPI. And this is one of the latest technology which competing with the laser and engraving around the world. This is some of our global foot numbers, and this is where we are present. Okay, and now I hope that I was fast in this small introduction, and I want to introduce my colleague, Ms. Caitlyn, to join us here. She will go with the details of our materials. I chose her because this is her work in GET, and it will give the direction that she give the explanation and direction how we worked on it, and how GET started from day one, putting all the rules and the condition so we can practice it, and we make sure that we work with high customers, that we are being secured and covered, and this is will not affect our business. And before I give her the speech, I want to thank you all, and thanks PECB for choosing us for this year, which for me, this award mean for me a lot, because it's like a reward for me after this 10 years of work, more than 10 years, and I feel that I did my job as an organization to be covered for, in a way, being given to her a present and say, you are the best one who practicing with us this type of certification. I want to thank our consultant, Mustafa Shami, who helped us, and he was one of the key guys who let us support us to be here. And I want to also thank Hanan Anubi. She is the head of quality assurance in GET, which she did the whole work. I give directions, I pay the money, and they do the work. Thank you very much, and sorry if I was late, if I speak a lot. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Caitlyn Burns. I am one of the legal counsel at GET. I have been with the company since 2014, and I will now spend the next portion of this presentation talking about, for the perspective of my role as a member of the legal department, how GET has reached its current compliance level and the importance of the support we have enjoyed from our CEO and the rest of the business team in its development. As a company whose mission and core values include ethics and integrity, bribery and corruption are global problems that we've always been aware of. Transparency International provides this annual index that reflects how strongly issues of bribery and corruption are perceived in countries worldwide. These problems have far-reaching consequences in both the private and public sectors in the countries they affect. Bribery and corruption hinder the rule of law, promote distrust of governments, and hurt national economies by diverting national wealth and discouraging foreign investment. You may be asking yourself why GET and other companies should care about issues surrounding bribery and corruption. Apart from the legal and ethical responses to this question, bribery and corruption are, plain and simply, bad for business. Whenever a company engages in bribery, it plants a seed for its own destruction. Even if they enjoy short-term success as a result of illicit activity, companies that pay bribes will always get caught and thereby undermine their own long-term interests. In the technology realm, corrupt solutions that win projects often will not work. The companies that cheat to win projects will not have the resources and the support base they need to sustain it. Thus, corruption is anti-competitive and disadvantages honest businesses that do not pay bribes. Allegations of corruption can also place a company's ability to win future projects in serious jeopardy, as potential customers and partners will not want to be associated with the negative reputation or liability that will accompany them. To protect itself from the problems associated with bribery and corruption, the first step that companies should undertake is a thorough assessment of their main areas of risk. For GET, we conducted this evaluation and it identified two main areas of concern. The first is the fact that as a global company, we operate in government and procurement fields in high-risk countries. And the second is that we have an international sales force that often utilizes third-party partners. To mitigate the risks posed by these concerns, GET's legal and compliance teams developed a comprehensive anti-bribery, anti-corruption program that, with the support of our CEO and the rest of GET's board of directors, imposes the rigorous standards of the US FCPA across GET's global offices. So the story of how GET developed its compliance program, our legal team started by researching many different areas of potential law. Our management team met with outside international law firms to review and develop policies. We also regularly attend training workshops and are regularly informed about updates to FCPA and anti-bribery laws globally. We looked first at local law as a source. We found that local laws can vary significantly from different countries that you are working in, and therefore we decided we could not base our cross-border compliance on just local law alone. The second source of law we consulted, international law, broadly speaking, applies to anti-bribery forensics in two main contexts. The first is the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, which requires signatories to criminalize corrupt acts in their nations, including domestic and foreign bribery. And this has 186 signatories worldwide. And the second is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or the OECD, which establishes legally binding standards to criminalize bribery of foreign officials in international business transactions. 44 countries are signatories to this convention, and it is the standard across most of the EU. GET assessed that these laws have a broad scope, but they are difficult to implement around the world because each country that enacts them has their own specifics of what is outlawed. So the US FCPA, or Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, was enacted in 1977, and we found that it was the precedent for both the UN and OECD laws that I just mentioned. The US was the first country to consider bribing foreign officials for business purposes to be illegal. And so GET decided to base its cross-border compliance around the FCPA because of its rigorous standards that overlap with the reach of international and much local law. While reviewing potential bases for anti-bribery policies and procedures, it is important to understand a fundamental question, which is what exactly is bribery? The technical aspects of this answer can vary depending on which law you are considering, but under the FCPA, bribes are corrupt payments of anything of value to foreign officials for the purpose of obtaining or retaining business. Each word in this definition has special meaning that advises companies on what actions may or may not result in a bribery charge, and it is important to remember that these elements of bribery must be taken together to be considered an FCPA violation. The next few slides will be a bit technical as I explore the legal elements of bribery, so please bear with me. The first element that must be present for an action to be considered bribery under the FCPA is a corrupt payment. A corrupt payment can be more than just a presentation of money. It can also be an offer to make a payment or an authorization of a payment to influence a foreign official. Even within this definition, a two-part test must be satisfied to qualify as a corrupt payment. The first is the act must have a corrupt intent, meaning a desire to wrongfully influence the recipient. And the second is a business purpose, or conduct in the course of business to gain an advantage. For example, an offer of payment by a company with the intention to gain access to non-public bid tender information would satisfy this test. The second element that must be present for an action to be considered an FCPA violation is that the payment must be anything of value. Apart from cash itself, items of value can also include gifts or discounts, entertainment, meals, drinks, travel, lodging, future employment opportunities, and even things such as charitable contributions if they are directed by a foreign official. With this element, it is important to remember that what is valuable to you may not be valuable to someone else. So the cultural and business context of the payment offer must be considered. The third element that must be present for an action to be considered bribery under the FCPA is a foreign official. This definition includes any officer or employee of a foreign government, a public international organization, or a state-owned business enterprise. So state-owned companies can vary around the world and can include, for example, utility and energy companies that have a government stake, state-owned contractors, or even public hospitals that are run. It is important to note that for the state-owned companies, any employee is considered to be a foreign official under this act. So up from the CEO down to an office secretary would all fall under this definition. Most companies today realize that they can be liable for the actions of their employees under the FCPA. But it is also important to consider who else might incur liability for you. Broadly, FCPA liability can come from anyone acting on your behalf, from traditional business partners to even, for example, your cousin if you decide to bid together on a project. The by whom category encompasses any company officer, director, employee, or agent, or also anyone acting on the company's behalf, such as a business partner or a joint venturer. The company would be liable for the actions of the third party so long as they knew there was a high probability that a violation would occur. Willful blindness is not allowed under the FCPA, and that is why having an anti-bribery program is so important, as it is evidence of your proactive attempt to ensure compliance with the law. When I was in law school, I was taught to always keep in mind that the rule that a law is designed to put in place will almost always have built-in exceptions. Under the FCPA, the main exceptions to the elements I just described is the reasonable business expense category. The law describes this category as bona fide and reasonable travel and entertainment expenses that are directly related to the demonstration of a company's products or services or the performance of its contractual obligations. Many people ask how broadly the FCPA can apply to gifts. The the FCPA does not prohibit gift giving, but rather it prohibits the payment of bribes, including those that are disguised as gifts. So determining whether a particular business courtesy crosses the line often turns on the giver's intent. Modest gifts are unlikely to raise FCPA concerns, but the more large or extravagant the gift, the more likely that it will be considered to have been given with an improper purpose. So now that you are all experts in the FCPA, I would like to use some examples that we have as part of our anti-bribery training process with our business team to illustrate some real-world examples of how the FCPA works. So consider this scenario. Company A has a booth at a trade show where it offers free pens, hats, t-shirts, and other similar promotional items containing the company's logo. Company A also serves free coffee, other beverages, and snacks at their booth. Some visitors to the booth are foreign officials. Is Company A in violation of the FCPA? So the analysis we run through with our business team is, no, Company A would not be in violation under the FCPA because these are legitimate, bona fide expenditures made in connection with the promotion, demonstration, or explanation of the products and services.
Any limitation of the price of such pens and the coffee?
Obviously, these are fairly modest examples. I would say if you were giving out, Dior shampoo or Louis Vuitton bags at your booth, that would probably be considered in another category. So another reason we review with the team as to why this would not be a violation is that there is nothing to suggest corrupt intent here, which, as you probably remember, is one of the requirements to be considered a violation. The FCPA does not seek to prevent companies from promoting their businesses in this way or providing legitimate hospitality, including that shown to foreign officials. In a second scenario, consider that Company A has a long-term contract with the government of Cambodia that requires Company A to periodically provide training to government officials. The training is paid for by the Cambodian government and takes place at Company A's US facility in New York. Can Company A pay for senior government officials to fly business class from Cambodia to New York to inspect the training, to inspect the facilities and observe the training? The analysis we review with our business team is yes, these expenses can be considered reasonable and bona fide under the FCPA. The company is providing the training to the government's employees and is hosting the senior officials to fulfill their contractual obligations. The officials' review of the execution and performance of the contract they signed is a legitimate business purpose, and even the provision of the business class airfare is reasonable under the circumstances, given the length of the flight from Cambodia to New York. Continuing with this scenario, can Company A executives take the senior officials from Cambodia to a moderately priced dinner, a professional sporting event, and a musical while they are in town? We review with the team that generally, yes, the company would be allowed to take the officials to the moderately priced dinner, the sporting event, and the musical, because these expenses could be considered reasonable and bona fide under the FCPA. We are providing training to the government's employees and hosting the senior officials for this purpose. So providing moderate hospitality, as is common in the business world when you're hosting guests, is not prohibited. Alternately, we ask our team, do you think the company could pay for the senior government officials, along with their spouses, to fly first class to Las Vegas, where the company does not have an office? And obviously here, the answer is no. The situation is very different and would almost certainly be considered an FCPA violation. as the conduct, it kind of has evidence of a corrupt intent. There's really no reason to send these people to Vegas. It does not appear to be designed for any legitimate business purpose, and it includes their spouses, which also points to a corrupt intent. In a final scenario,
Yes, just a question. To mix the first and the second scenario, is it possible for company A to pay for a business class flight for the Cambodians, but also for the spouses of the Cambodians?
my analysis would be likely not, because there's really no business purpose for the spouses to be accompanying the officials.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So it's like the fact that the business people themselves have to come as a fulfillment of the contractual obligations. So the business person can say, oh, I want to go, I want to make sure all the conditions of the contract and the training are being upheld. But there is really no business purpose for them to bring their husband or wife with them.
Okay, because I've been told about hospitality. When you invite somebody, maybe you could invite also his spouse because of hospitality. So I didn't know.
I don't think I would advise paying for the spouse to come. But so say the spouse was paid for, like their transportation was paid for themselves. If the spouse was present and you wanted to include them in the dinner, for example, I think that would be okay.
Okay, I understand.
Can I add a point here? It depends on the culture.
Okay.
There's the culture matters. Yeah, so I believe for the European and Americans, it will be bribery. But for us, in Middle East, basically we, like you say, hospitality, we can invite the wife to come and it doesn't be in this concern, you know. So it depends on the culture and the countries. And this is the problem of this subject, how you practice it. But the law is law in the end.
Okay.
Yeah, to add to what you're saying, I also agree with you. It depends on the culture. From where I'm also coming from, first class, so we didn't have an issue. Why not economy? You understand?
Why it's not economy? Because if he's a senior person, long distance. Not only long distance. If he's a senior position, you cannot put him in economy. You know, like if you have someone covering from government or from a commercial company and he's a senior position, like in a way, like he's a CEO or whatever, you cannot, you know, hospitality would be in the same level like he treats himself. You cannot take him up and tell him I invite you economy. You know, at least he travel business or first, you have to give him the same level.
And building off that point, another thing the FCPA considers is how the company treats its own employees, its own comparable employees. So for example, with a flight, they say if you have a policy in place that says, you know, management officials above this level, we authorize business class on a flight over this amount of hours.
Mm-hmm.
If we have that policy for ourselves, it is evidence that offering it to our officials does not have corrupt intent. We are just extending the same treatment that we provide to our own employees. So in this final scenario that I like to go through during the training, so consider the fact that 2 years ago, Company A won a long-term contract with the Ukraine government. Company A executives are in Ukraine for meetings with officials, and we find out that the director of the Ministry of Internal Affairs that we are working with was recently married. Our executives have known this minister for a number of years, and we want to congratulate him. So can our executives present a moderately priced crystal vase to the director as a wedding present and a token of esteem without violating the FCPA? The analysis that we run through is that yes, we believe Company A could provide this gift to the director. It is appropriate to provide reasonable gifts to foreign officials as tokens of esteem or gratitude. It is important, however, that the gifts be made openly and transparently, and that they're properly recorded in the company's books and records. And further, gifts must be given only when considered appropriate under local law and reasonable for the occasion. So here, a moderately priced crystal vase to reflect esteem would be reasonable, but there would probably be more, if something was more extravagant, that might play around with that line a little bit more.
extravagant price, does it have to be extravagant for the person who pays or for the person who receives?
So that also, you have to consider the cultural context and the business context. Because remember, the question of whether something is a violation of the FCPA turns on intent. So in your country, if it is customary to give a certain, a wedding present of X value, that might be considered more reasonable than if it was not customary. So they consider both your circumstances and the circumstances of the recipient for the context. So you might be asking, why does all of this matter to you? So beyond the fact that it is considered one of the world's leading anti-bribery standards, the FCPA is a law that has broad international applicability. So within the US, it applies to any US citizen, national, resident, or company. And internationally, it applies to any company that has quote-unquote sufficient links with the US. So for example, the US government has found jurisdiction in instances where a foreign company has had wire transfers cleared by a US bank, and also where a foreign company has stock that is currently or has been traded on a US exchange. In addition to this broad jurisdiction, the FCPA also has a high cost if you violate it. For companies, there is both civil and criminal liability, with fines of up to $2 million per violation. $2 million for each instance of bribery is a lot of money and should be considered as a kind of warning as to how seriously the US government takes anti-bribery. And also, for individuals, company officers, directors, shareholders, and employees can face personal fines of up to $100,000, and they can go to jail for up to 5 years if their company is found to have violated the FCPA and they are found to have known about it. So that is important, I think, for any company developing an anti-bribery program, is for the management team to consider, if one of the people below me does something that violates the FCPA, I personally could go to jail. I personally could be held responsible. So an industry example of this that reflects how broad the international reach can be of the FCPA. So in 2008, there were allegations that a company made over $1 billion in illegal payments by multiple lines of businesses over a 7-year period. This was a German company. It included more than $100 million in bribes to secure a national ID card project in Argentina. And the result of the investigation was a settlement that still stands as the second largest in the FCPA's history, $800 million.
It's the third now.
Sorry?
It's the third
Oh, the
now.
third now? So this included both criminal fines for the violation and also disgorgement of the ill-gotten profits. And so additionally, in addition to this money paid to the US government, they had also had to settle for another approximate $800 million with their home government, who launched an investigation that piggybacked off the US.
And you have the cost of the monitoring as well, which was $3.7 billion.
So there's a new case, it's bigger than.
Oh yes.
Yes. We never
And the last one is this year, is Petrobras.
okay. This one.
And the second one is Telia, Swedish company.
Or the Telia.
Sorry?
Telia.
Telia. It's a Swedish, Telia Communication, Swedish company.
So given how the FCPA has such broad applicability worldwide and the severity of its potential consequences, companies should at least consider incorporating it into their anti-bribery programs. I will now review some key aspects that GET has found important in establishing and implementing our anti-bribery program. So just some general things to keep in mind. When we worked with our international law firms and consultants to develop our compliance program, We kept these points in mind that come from the FCPA's published guidance. So there is not a one-size-fits-all set of standards for anti-bribery compliance, and each company needs to tailor its policies and procedures to address the specific risks it faces in the context of its size and its resources. So what may be considered a reasonable compliance program for GET may be considered, too much or too little for another company, depending on their specific circumstances. So the first theme that has had a very positive impact on our anti-bribery compliance has been the tone that has been set from the top of our company. So our CEO has always made it clear that bribery or corrupt behavior will not be tolerated, and she has passed this strong belief down to her management team. The management team adopts this stance and passes it down to their business teams. So it is important for anti-bribery or really any compliance that the tone that we are going to comply is set from the top of the organization down. The second aspect of our compliance that we found very important is just generally establishing a company culture of compliance. So our management team regularly reviews the reports that the legal department prepares on prospective partners and projects. If our team is considering working on a project in a specific country and our director wants to know what are the specific bribery or corruption risks that you face in this country, they will request from legal a report, like a detailed country report that will review those circumstances. And our management team also invests in compliance tools for our team. So for example, when we are conducting our due diligence investigations, we have access to a broad international database that gives us, for example, negative articles, if a company or contract has been accused of something, or whether or not they are sanctioned under a trade list, or things like that. We also have a strong code of conduct related to anti-bribery compliance. So we have corporate-level policies that all new hires review and sign off on during our onboarding process. We have additional written policies that govern gift giving and accepting funds on behalf of the company. And there are stringent HR procedures in place to investigate and issue disciplinary action in the event of policy violations. And sometimes it is difficult for a company like GET. So for example, the sales team that I work with stretches from China to Dubai to Egypt to the US. But we find it very important to conduct company-wide training related to anti-bribery. So we provide regular training for our business team on and review of compliance issues. This includes formal training sessions annually for all new hires and senior management, and also individual reports and meetings with the team depending on the projects they are pursuing. Another important aspect of our anti-bribery compliance is the education we provide to our third-party partners. So we use best efforts to ensure that our third-party partners comply with the FCPA and all other relevant compliance laws. So we do this in a couple of ways. We have a written international partner policy that we require them to sign off on. And we also, particularly when a partnership reaches the project or commercial stage, we include clauses in our contracts with the local partners that govern their assurance, their representation and warranty that they will comply with all applicable local and US anti-bribery laws. So what we actually do is to make a violation of anti-bribery laws a violation of our contract. And sort of the tool that binds all of these different things together is the due diligence investigations that we conduct. So as part of the legal team, I conduct red flag reviews of specific projects and third-party partners, and these are based on information provided by our business team. So any diligence investigation is a very active collaboration between legal and sales. So they inform us of things like the degree of interaction with government officials and agencies that they expect, whether or not they anticipate using agents consultants, brokers, or distributors. And also, they let us know if they have particular concerns about the reputation of a country where the collaboration or project will take place. So we take all of this information, we do our investigations, and then we issue a report to them and our management team that says, oh, for this project, we have identified these red flags, and we recommend you take these actions accordingly. So to wrap up, I just wanted to leave you with a couple of current trends that we've noticed in terms of anti-bribery compliance. In the US, at least, there has been an increased focus on prosecutions. There were $2.43 billion in enforcement sanctions issued in 2016. And there has also been an increased international cooperation and anti-corruption enforcement. So if one government is investigating a country for alleged bribery or corruption, it now is inclined to reach out to the governments in other countries that might be involved to have a multi-jurisdictional investigation that obviously can uncover a lot more information than just the single. And so I started the presentation by talking about why bribery is bad for business. And I would just like to wrap up by talking about how compliance is good for business because it allows for future business opportunities and the growth of a company's international reputation. So, thank you very much.